In this lab, we're going to use ChatGPT to create or perform a sensitivity analysis. Specifically, we call it cost volume profit analysis. Now, cost volume profit analysis is where we vary the amount of units sold. That'd be the volume, right? The costs, fixed and variable costs, and the level of profits. And that's all going to vary based on various assumptions we might have. So to get started, let's go ahead and start a new chat. We're going to go ahead and just click on this to start a new chat, and that will open up or clear the registers. And I'm just going to go ahead, and usually how I like to start these types of questions is I want to ask it a question just to give it a hint of what I'd like to do. And so I'd like to perform a sensitivity analysis. In other words, I'm trying to figure out how sensitive our profits are to changes in sales costs and profit price levels. And so I'm kind of asking it what it needs from me because I might not say something exactly right. And so I'm going to have it work with me to do that. Sensitivity analysis is an example of prescriptive analytics where we're trying to evaluate the sensitivity to various assumptions. And so first it asks us, hey, let's start with a profit model. These would be how much have we sold, right? The price less the unit cost, so that would be what we often call the contribution margin, times the number of units sold. And I like to usually put parens around these, but the profit per item times how many did we sell less the fixed cost. So that kind of gets us going. And then it asks us to tell it the base case. Where are we starting from? And so we're going to have a base case. If we said price and unit cost was 50 and 30 and we sold 10,000 following this profit, then we now subtract fixed costs to get our profit. And then we're going to go and make some changes to that based on some various assumptions. We can do this one at a time or two at a time through that and see how it might vary if, for example, in this case, if the price changes, price per unit changes. And so we see what that looks like. Here it is, the sensitivity to sales volume, to unit costs, as well as to fixed costs. And so we could also kind of do a two-way at this. And so we see price changing on the rows and the columns changing by how many we've sold. And so that kind of gets us started in that. So let's go ahead and tell it our base assumptions. And so if I'm going to use the scenario from this particular lab, I'm going to tell it specifically what the base case is. And the base case is that we sold 2,000 units at a unit sales price of $15. The unit variable cost is $9, and the total fixed cost are $2,000. And so now it's going to compute that profit based on these. And so it's going to go right into that profit formula and figure out what the contribution margin is, how many did we sell, less the fixed cost of $2,000. And so you can kind of use this to calculate, and it looks like the base case profit is $10,000. And so it says, hey, what would you like to do? How would you like to go forward? And what I'm going to do is kind of a two-way sensitivity analysis, and I'm going to vary both the sales price. So instead of our sales price, which was 15, I'm going to vary that between 10 and 20. And the unit variable cost, whereas before it was 9 right here, we're going to allow that vary between 6 and 12 and calculate the profits for each scenario. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. It tells us it's a two-way sensitivity analysis. It does the profit and goes and takes a look. And so here's my two-way, right? So here's my unit variable cost, and here is my price of what's being charged. And now it's going to say, hey, we're going to take that contribution margin per unit that we just calculated here and multiply that by the 2,000 units and then subtract the fixed costs. And so here is the profit table. So if the costs were $12, but the price was 10, we'd be losing money on every unit, right? But if we're able to sell it for 20 and it costs us 6, we'll be able to make a much larger profit. And so we can kind of see what that looks like. Tells us the best case, worst case scenario, and look at that. Now, when I do a cost volume profit analysis, I often like to see it as a visualization because, you know, this type of chart could go on forever and be hard to find everything. Can we see it visually? So I'm going to actually call it a heat map. Heat map meaning deeper colors as it goes, or diversion as the the colors change, we can see the levels of profits. And so let's go ahead and ask it to do that same sensitivity analysis, but now as a heat map. And as we do that heat map, we're going to be able to go and look at it and see what it looks like and see if we can interpret it. So here's the heat map it provided, and there's a way to get even more detail. I like using the colors different, but it looks like the more purple, the greater the loss, the more the yellow, the greater of the gain. There are things I can do. I can say, hey, give me a step. Essentially, if I could go 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and $20, I'd be able to see much more definition. And so I can see what that looks like. I could also specify the colors, saying, and accountants, business people usually like, the more red means red ink, you're losing money. And the more green you might get. And so you can play with this and get it to do various a heat map more to your liking and see what that looks like. But this works great for our purposes. We're going to go ahead and output that heat map as a cost volume profit analysis. And I like naming it specifically. Sometimes I might go ahead and give it and say exactly what my assumptions were going in here or what the base case looked like. So I'm going to go ahead and have it output. Again, if I hit right here, it would output one, but wouldn't give it my name. It'll just say output1.png or something. And I'd like a little more definition when I go and look at it to see exactly what I did. So we asked it to output this, and so it has done so. And so let's take a look at it. Okay, so it looks like it's coming in here. Let's go ahead and download the file, and it's going to go ahead and tell us the download has started. I'm going to go up and look in my download area, and I can see that it's sitting there, and I could go ahead and open it or go and look at it in my downloads folder. Okay, the last thing I'd like to do is tell it what I provided, particularly in this case because I want to see what was my base assumptions and then how I evaluated that. And so let's go ahead and print out the prompts, see what the prompts look like, and so we're able to look at it and be able to recreate it, because it might be, I did this 5 days ago and now I'm trying to say, what was that fixed cost again? What was the unit variable cost to start? How many units did I sell? Might be good. And so sometimes it will print it out as a Word file. Other times I can just ask it to output it to the screen. But this works great for our purposes. So this completes this lab.